Got to tell you, Brendon, this might be the one I'm least excited about of the ones we've done so far. I think we've had a real tinge of optimism. I think we've had a real tinge of hope for a lot of the teams we've talked about so far. I do not have any of that in talking about the Washington Wizards. I think they're in a good state. Their franchise is moving in the right direction now with the trades they made. I think, moving on from Bradley Beal. I think reshuffling the deck with the Wizards trade, or with the trade with the Warriors to bring in Jordan Poole and say, like, F it. I totally get paying Kyle Kuzma a bunch of money. Not exactly, but you could probably trade him again if you wanted to. I think they are in a different era with, Michael Winger in there, and we'll see where it goes. But this season is not going to be particularly good, and that's why I'm going to start out and be really snarky and say that my most important player is whoever they're going to take in the draft next year, and I don't know if I care that much about anyone on this roster, like, in a major way, as I'm kind of building this out. Like, that's a little bit rude. I understand that, but they've not drafted well in recent years. They don't have a guy that screams future all-star to me in this roster. This is about, like, who are they getting in the 2024 draft, and, like, are they going to get Ron Holland? Is there someone in the draft they're going to love and get lucky and get someone that could really change things for them? That's to me what this is. That's the most important player for the Wizards in 2024. I understand I'm cheating, but I can't
fine.
be like,
I get you. Because I thought pretty hard about Jordan Poole, and I was like, I just cannot. I cannot sit here and give you real Jordan Poole analysis and try to make the case. If he turns into a little bit more of an efficient offensive version of himself, then he is a playable player, but his defense has been atrocious forever, and it's just like he's not going to be the centerpiece of even a good team, right? I mean, we just kind of can say that at this point. But first, I'll say, if they did get the opportunity to draft Ron Holland, this is actually absolutely the team that will, because they have a lot of the Thunderbrain trust coming over from this to run this front office, and they're going to take the freak athlete, the toolsy guy, the raw developmental prospect.
I've only read good things about him in the last week too, based on some of this G League stuff. Like, he's gotten really rave reviews coming out of that, for whatever that's worth. I mean, Athletic, other places.
So, with that said, my most important player is Bilal Coulibaly.
Okay.
Got to talk about him at least. I mean, he is probably the one player on this roster who you would hope, if you're Michael Winger or any Wizards fan, is on this team in 5 years. Like, he'd be the one you would circle that you would hope makes it. So let me make the case for why he could be an all-star, like you said you don't see any of on this roster. Just turned 19.
I think, like, surefire. I don't think there's, like, a surefire all-star.
No, of course not. Yeah. Just turned 19 in July. He was playing with Mets 92's U21 team until early December of last year. So 8-9 months ago, this guy was on, like, the junior team for a French league squad that isn't even the best league in the world. He rose to playing with the main team, didn't get a full-time starting job until mid-April, and still flashed enough upside and potential in those games and impacted those games in real ways. He was scoring, he was playing defense, he was creating turnovers in those playoff and finals games with Victor Wembanyama, and then showed enough in the pre-draft process to become a guy that the Thunder did like, if you remember, so that was part of why I made that point, and then eventually gets superseded by that interest with the Wizards taking him at, it was 7, right? So, or 9, 7, 9, 8? I don't remember. Top 10 pick.
7.
He shot 50% from 2, nearly 70% from the free throw line at Summer League. Very small sample, but it is true. 34% from deep on about 120 attempts for Mets 92 over the course of last season. That's a good starting point. And going back and watching the Wizards, what he did at Summer League, he got on-ball reps right away. There's not a lot on this depth chart ahead of him. It's going to be ugly. His finishing is a work in progress. He makes very simple passes, but nothing beyond that. It is really building from the ground up. But I do think we could see a, whatever you want to pick, Anunoby, Jeremy Grant, Paul George type of development arc. I'm not saying he's going to reach the heights of Paul George and be a top 5 MVP finisher, but that's like the blueprint for what you would want a wing development arc to look like if you could dream it up. We could see a pretty quick rise from a guy like this because of how solid I think his foundation already is as a two-way guy, how young he's getting a start with real developmental reps, and how aggressive Washington seems to want to turn him into that type of player. So not sitting here saying he's going to be an all-star, but I think he will be somebody, maybe, on another team, maybe he's the player we're going to be talking about by the end of the season, which is our next category. But here, I think he could make Wizards fans feel pretty good about all right, we got a guy. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's your sixth man, seventh man. I'm not going to predict, but I think he's an NBA player. It feels like he has the tools to become that because the shot especially is already so far along.
So he's my pick for a player we're going to talk about at the end of next season because I think everything you just said is right, and he has the 6'6". He's listed at 6'6", 230. That's already an NBA. That's already NBA size. That is.
Like he's taller than that, to be honest, but maybe it's just because he's so long.
Well, okay, and you have the length. This is someone who's going to come in and has the NBA body, and yes, is there going to be an adjustment strength wise? Yes. I don't think he looks 230. He doesn't really look like he's got the strength of someone who's 6'6", 230. He doesn't have the solid torso that kind of projects. He's not going to have issues being in that way. But if you're talking to me about someone who I think has the right template of being an awesome NBA player, and I think is going to do really fun shit, and I think actually just is going to get to experiment a little bit, I think he's the guy in this roster. I don't have Johnny Davis optimism. We know what Corey Kispert is. Ryan Rollins, they get back in this trade from the Warriors. Maybe he's someone that they give playing time to. He's a 6'4" scoring guard that had some pre-draft buzz as a sleeper. Didn't really happen in Golden State. I don't think he's overwhelmed in any way. That there's no one that wrote trade grades of that trade and was the Wizards got a really good swing piece in Ryan Rollins, but maybe just in a new environment he gets to play and figure stuff out and he pops and it's okay, we found something else. Maybe Denny Avdija takes another step and we're oh, okay, this is a legit guy that now they have him and they have Koulibaly. But I think this answer to me is Koulibaly. I think at the end of the year you're going to look at this guy and I don't think his rookie of the year odds are long. Vic is probably going to win rookie of the year if he plays 65 games, all that stuff. But Koulibaly is someone who is going to look like an NBA player and will get thrown in the fire and probably struggle at times and all of that, but I think come out on the other side looking good and has the frame. This is the most intriguing Wizards draft pick for me in a long time. There's none of these other guys on the roster are mildly as interesting as Koulibaly is in year one.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about him, right? Is I think it's tempting to look at him and be oh, it's Giannis or it's pick your Bruno Caboclo, right? It's just these 1 in a million, maybe the lottery ticket hits types of guys. I think he's a little bit more polished and has a higher floor than that. And so that's part of what intrigued me about him. The other thing is, again, watching him at Summer League, he actually struggles with on-ball defense right now. So it's he's not even where he needs to necessarily be guarding on the ball yet. He was getting beaten by smaller guys. He, as you mentioned with the size, he's not probably strong enough to be guarding Jimmy Butler or Jason Tatum or Giannis yet, so he's going to struggle there. He has this weird thing. I mentioned his finishing isn't great, but he gets fouled a ton. So I do think he's kind of already at a place where it's he'll probably get to the line quite a bit, and he did shoot, I think I said 70% in the Summer League. I don't remember what he shot. I think it was a little touch below 68, 69 in the French League. But he's comfortable getting to his pull-up mid-range jumper. All these skills where you're it's normally 2 or 3 steps past where he is that you start to see somebody even try that stuff, getting fouled, taking pull-up shots, that type of thing, and he's already trying it. So that makes me feel good. My player we're going to be talking about, Corey Kispert.
Okay.
And here's why.
I like Corey Kispert.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard because, like you said, there's just not a lot of high-ceiling players on this team that you're going to be oh, and then they took a huge step forward. Even Denny Avdija, it's I think his next chapter will be how he can impact a good team. I don't expect to see Denny Avdija do more on a bad team. He's not that type of player. So just to give the, general, we know who Corey Kispert is, but he's at nearly 700 three-point attempts in the NBA this year, or in his career so far already. He's shooting 39%. He's just one of the better shooters in the league. Super deep range, can make them from all sorts of places. Not a very good defender, but what I think makes him the player we're going to be talking about is I think he's one of the only players who you could see them trade and get something for. So we'll be talking about him as the guy they traded for a few seconds or something, I think. Because again, like Avdija, it's what does he do on a bad team? He's not. I mean, he spaces the floor. Like, that's not a bad thing to have. Every team looks better when they have shooting out there, but okay. Send him to, like, some contender who needs another piece.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we want to matchmake Corey Kispert to another team? But I feel like that's like rude for this preview. But I think we could.
The Wolves.
Yeah,
they just or the Pelicans or the Grizzlies, like those teams that need shooting.
The Wolves one feels good. I would have said like if Cleveland didn't get Strus, that would have been like, can you just like get like budget Max Strus?
It's a big surprise you would think of the Cavs there.
Look, the
Bucks. The Bucks, they need another white guy who can shoot. Connaughton, Grayson Allen, and Corey Kispert.
It's
pile up.
I'm trying. Lakers could always use it. I mean, like the Lakers just adding a shooter.
Yeah, it's all these contenders. I mean, we're just listing teams that want to win a championship and need a little more shooting.
Actually, if you wanted to go a rebuilding team, also the Suns could also use him, Brendon, just to put both teams there. But
I thought they were going to draft him maybe once upon a time. They did not. They drafted Jalen Smith.
You know what bad team should get him that I think he would actually just help their young guys because they all want to play with the ball? Portland.
Sure.
Just put a shooter. Give me shooting around Scoot and Simons and Shaedon Sharp.
Yeah, at least they have ball handlers that could deliver passes to Kispert. Like like for this year's Wizards, it's like what is the upside of a pick and roll that is Tyus Jones getting a screen by Daniel Gafford, passing it to Corey Kispert in the corner. Like that just does nothing.
Let's get Tyus Jones on a good team as well.
Well, he was,
but like back on a good team.
Yeah, back on a good team.
Yeah.
All right, can we do best lineup?
Yeah, I pulled the numbers on the best lineup for this one on Kleen in the Glass
from last year.
From last year.
So all guys who don't play for this team anymore, probably.
Yeah, you're right. Here's the one that had the best one that had above 300 possessions because the best one technically only had 160 possessions, and the numbers are so outrageous that they're not real. I don't think the numbers on this one are real either. Mm-hmm. But Monty Morris,
yeah,
Bradley Beal.
Mm-hmm.
Denny Avdija, Kyle Kuzma, and Kristaps Porzingis. 317 possessions. Outscored teams by plus 14.2 per 100 possessions. Scored 125.6 per 100. Had a defensive rating of 111.4.
Obviously, I have spent a lot of time thinking about last year's Wizards, both for this show with the Porzingis chatter and everything, but also because Bradley Beal plays for the Suns now, and I've watched some of their games back and everything. Really, and then prepping for this, a lot of my takeaway is they should have been better last year. Like in the win-loss column, like I'm not saying they should have won 50 games, but like they should have been a little closer to like being 500 at least. They had talent, and a lot of the stats paint them in a decent light. They just didn't win.
So does that I guess reflect on the apathy in the organization at a certain point that trickles down into play? Does that reflect on Wes Unseld Jr. as a head coach? Is it all of these things? Is it Beal not being what he was? Like,
don't have any defense. That's kind of where I came down. Like I'm still not really sure. Daniel Gafford, like what is he in the NBA? He's probably like a third or maybe even a fourth big. Like probably not a starting guy on a really good team. Porzingis doesn't really play a ton of defense, although people decided he had a good defensive season last year for whatever reason. I don't personally fully agree with that. And then obviously, like it's no coincidence that lineups with like Darrell Wright, Denny Avdija did really well. Those are like the only two guys who play defense on this roster.
DeLon Wright.
I keep doing that. I literally did it for an entire show about Beal the other day on Locked On Suns, and I had multiple commenters be like, not the right guy, and I did it again. I just love the early 2010s Warriors were just like extremely my shit.
We're gonna Brad Rowland, one of the biggest DeLon Wright respecter that I know, is gonna come.
He's a good player. He's in my best lineup, so let me get there.
Okay, go.
Best lineup for the 2024 Washington Wizards. Tyus Jones. They brought him in for a reason. He's gonna set everything up. He's going to be a floor raiser. I have DeLon Wright here. Turned himself into a pretty good two-way role player. One of the only guys who plays defense, can knock down threes, can dribble the ball. He's going to make them better when he's out there. Denny Avdija, Swiss Army knife, not great at any one thing. Good team defender, passable three-point shooter, I guess. Also can handle the ball, sure. Kyle Kuzma, You got to have some
player.
sort of buckets, and he's going to play a ton of minutes. Kyle Kuzma is going to be out there for this Wizards team. They just paid him a lot. Daniel Gafford is my center. They don't really have another center. That is what I'll say about Daniel Gafford. My main takeaway from that lineup, though, Chris, one, I did not put Jordan Poole in that lineup, so maybe we can talk a little bit more about Poole now. And second, they're not young enough for what a tanking season should be like. I think this team's going to tear down even more during the season.
They absolutely should tear down as the season goes on. I'll give you my lineup as well. It's basically the same. Tyus Jones at point guard. I am going to throw Jordan Poole in there just because I just let him shoot and make some threes. And also I think best lineup for this team to some degree is like, how can we be as inefficient as possible and like kind of lose some games, to be honest with you. I'm going to put Avdija at the 3. I think honestly, give him some on-ball reps, see what happens. Kuzma, who's the best player on this team, I think, is going to be at the 4, which, like, that's a wild thing to say, but, like, good for Kyle Kuzma making lots of money, being the best player on the team right now. And then I think you're right, it has to be Gafford at the 5. They don't really have another center. Looking at their basketball reference page, the only other player, Brendon, listed on their roster with... Well, Daniel Gafford is actually not listed as a center in Basketball Reference. He's listed as a forward. The only player with a C in his name on their roster page right now is Mike Muscala. That tells you what this Wizards roster is.
And they did just sign
bad.
Taj Gibson, so I guess it'll be those two.
Look, if you had to pick between
in 2023, probably not going to put Muscala or Gibson on the court.
Okay, but if you were going to be one of Mike Muscala or Tristan Thompson and take a veteran's minimum contract to be the grouchy old guy in the locker room, which one of those guys would you want to be this year? The one where you get to play, or the one where you like get to win, but you're gonna like probably not.
I think
play
Taj Gibson has been thankful he's still getting NBA checks for like 3 years, and I mean that in the most respectful way ever. That dude is like a journeyman of journeymen, and he's still here. Like, he was on the Knicks for longer than you remember. He was on the Wizards last year, if I'm remembering right. I think this is year 2 for him in Washington. But yeah, I think on the trade notion and everything else, and we can get to best and worst case, like, may we all have as much fun chucking shots in whatever context we play basketball as Danilo Gallinari is about to the first half of this season to get his way to another team. Landry Shamet, watch this be where he finally breaks out after not pleasing anybody in LA, Philly, or Phoenix. It'll all happen here in Washington, D.C., and these guys will all be on different teams, and hopefully the Wizards become the like 5th or 6th team in the league to have more first-round picks than they know what to do with. My best-case scenario is Koulibaly and Johnny Davis, who we haven't mentioned. I think he can be a backup point guard probably. Show signs of life, and Washington looks more promising while still tanking. Worst case, I had Poole and Kuzma try to pad their stats. The team has no identity, and the rebuild gets off to a tough start.
I think best case is you lose a lot of games, but Koulibaly looks good, and obviously you take somewhat of a step forward, and you feel good about those two guys, and then you maximize whatever draft capital you can with the other guys that you have. I don't really know, unless you're going to trade Kuzma, I don't really know how many first-round picks you're really extracting out of this roster, but at least some seconds I think you could get for some of these guys and figure that out. Worst case, I think you just get a little bit, you are a little bit too lucky. And, like, yes, you have the shot chucking that stalls development, but you also just, like, luck into, like, 5 more wins than you're supposed to. And you, like, hurt your lottery position as a result.
I think they could get a first for Tyus, maybe?
Late. I think, like, a late first.
Yeah, sure. Nobody here is worth a high first.
Like, I mean, you're probably asking for, like, 2 for Kuzma. Like,
I mean, they just got 1 or 2 firsts for Porzingis, right? So, like, that's already kind of that was their cash-in piece. Yeah, Kuzma, I think, could get a first, at least one.
Yeah, but, like,
maybe not this
I don't know. Yeah. All right,
over-under
right now, yeah. Over-under's at 24.5. I am taking the under, Brendon. Same. I think there's a very good chance this is the worst team in the league, and they win, like, 19 games.
They're going to be the worst watch in the league, and I say that with love to Wizards fans. They get Rachel Nichols on the local broadcast, which is pretty cool. Nice little nugget about the Wizards. But other than that, you know, that might be a reason to tune in for like the first handful of games, and then you get over it, and then you realize basketball's bad.
Yeah, and get Drew Gooden still over there earning checks on the broadcast. Good for Drew Gooden.
Yeah, they're doing it. They're even more overboard with not overboard, but all in on the local. We're going to own the broadcast stuff than even the Suns are. The Suns have gotten all the attention for going on local TV, but the Wizards are running like their whole channel themselves. Like they're doing a whole studio show and like all this stuff. I'm like, that's pretty interesting. But their owner is a media guy, so he kind of comes from that world. So that does not matter to their over-under. I have the under as well. I think they could be a better offense than maybe people expect, but the defense is going to be even worse than last year, and there's no incentive to win. I hope Wes Unseld keeps his job past this year because, seems a little NFL-ish putting that dude in a position where everything's just being torn apart around him and then being like, all right, you kind of sucked. It's like, well, did he? Like what are we expecting from him? So I hope he gets a chance next year to actually see what a real system can look like, because this is going to be another transition year. But I think it would be better for them if this hits the under.
They need to hit the under at all costs.